So in January 1941, Admiral Yamamoto was directed to begin planning an aerial assault on Pearl Harbor. He studied in detail Britain's recent successful torpedo plane attack of 3 Italian battleships in the shallow Mediterranean port of Taranto, Italy. Up until this attack, shallow harbors such as Pearl Harbor's 40-foot deep waters were considered safe from torpedoes. When launched from aircraft, torpedoes required 100 to 300 feet of water in which to rise to the surface and find their targets. In shallower water, they would simply become stuck in the sea floor. Based on the Taranto attack, Japanese engineers began developing special wooden fins for the torpedoes that enabled them to be effective in shallow waters. With this technical issue solved, Japan had confidence their attack could be successful. While their planning for Pearl Harbor was underway, the Japanese made their first move in the southern operation by invading Indochina in July 1941. This action, in conjunction with Japan's recent signing of the Tripartite Pact, prompted the United States to cut off all supplies of raw materials and petroleum to Japan and to freeze all Japanese government assets. This oil embargo had an immediate major economic impact because at the time, Japan imported nearly 80% of its petroleum from the United States. This U.S. retaliation simply strengthened Japan's resolve to move into the southern resource area, particularly the oil-rich Dutch East Indies. Japan sent envoys to Washington to attempt to negotiate a settlement between the two nations. They offered to withdraw from Indochina if the United States would resume oil shipments. However, they made it clear that they intended to pursue territories to the south and wanted a commitment from the United States not to interfere. The United States responded that under no conditions would it tolerate additional Japanese aggression. On November 26, 1941, although negotiations were still in progress, Admiral Yamamoto ordered Japan's Carrier Strike Force to begin its 12-day, 4,000-mile journey. Its course was through the North Pacific, plotted south of Alaska's Aleutian Islands, and onto Pearl Harbor from the north. It was winter, and no ship traffic was expected in these stormy, foggy, subarctic waters. In fact, as an example of the meticulous planning that went into this attack, Japan had sent an ocean liner on a visit to Hawaii along this same route several weeks earlier. The military scout aboard reported no ships in this remote stretch of the North Pacific. To support the Carrier Strike Force, Japan also launched a special attack force consisting of 27 modern attack submarines. These subs, arriving in advance of the carriers, were to conduct reconnaissance in the Pearl Harbor area, attack any ships trying to escape from Pearl Harbor during the strike, and protect the carriers from any counterattacks. 5 of these submarines were fitted with 2-man midget subs that were to probe Pearl Harbor and join in the impending attack. The Japanese carriers moved through the rough seas under blackout conditions and strict radio silence. If observed at any time before December 6, their orders were to turn around and return home. Japan's best pilots had been hand-picked for this mission, but because of the secrecy of the mission, with the exception of senior officers, neither the pilots nor the crews of the warships knew their final destination. On December 2nd, when it was decided that negotiations in Washington would not be productive, Admiral Yamamoto informed the strike force to proceed with the attack. Only then were the crews and pilots told that their mission was to strike Pearl Harbor. As the Carrier Strike Force approached its target, the disposition of the Pacific Fleet within Pearl Harbor was assessed by Japanese scout planes. It became apparent there were no aircraft carriers in the harbor, but many battleships were anchored along Battleship Row. Perhaps most importantly, there were no alert conditions on the island. On December 5th, Admiral Yamamoto sent this final message, which was relayed to all members of the strike force. The moment has arrived. The rise or fall of our empire is at stake. All men must give their utmost. With these words, he unleashed the full fury of the storm that was to engulf the United States and the entire Pacific region.